Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Friday, October 6th. Well, happy Friday. A lot of phrases come to mind today with today's price action. Like I would say, the meme with Will Ferrell, like that escalated quickly, is probably the one that comes to mind. But wow, it was one heck of a reversal from today's lows. It kind of I'll start today's video and I'll talk about the jobs report because that was that was the main event that everybody was watching today. But from there, just the trade setups really developed. I think if you watched yesterday's video, going over some of those charts and having a plan set up for today, I mean, that was certainly my approach, right? I had talked about in yesterday's video that the word that I used yesterday over and over and over was it was hinge. I thought price was just hinging on breakouts like all over the place. And from where we were this morning, it looked like, geez, wow, we're getting rejected right where we needed to break higher. And then you kind of began to think a little bit. So I'll get into that. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purpose only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. But what I'm referring to is, when you began to kind of think about it, in the initial reaction, which is a logical reaction from today's jobs report, because it was a higher than expected jobs report. Non-farm payrolls came in 336 versus 170. Also, the previous number was actually revised up, which we've been seeing a lot of revisions the other way, but this one was positive. But and we saw all the logical moves take place because it is what it is. The market is focused on inflation, and the stronger the economic reports come out, what happens? The dollar goes up. Right now, bond yields are going higher, and so on and so forth. Right? And then, of course, once you see yields go higher, then that translates right over to a higher VIX, and equities sell off. Right? That's the knee-jerk reaction. But when you dug into this data point, as I had said in yesterday's, I believe I said it in yesterday's video. If not, I did it for members. But I talked about how I thought that the most important data point could be the average hourly earnings, because really that detects if there's inflation. You could have a decent jobs report, and if it lifts earnings, then you've got then you have the problem with inflation. But first of all, this number is not that crazy, right? 336 versus 170. I mean, it's kind of splitting hairs a little bit, in terms of what goes on and the seasonal adjustments and all that. So to me, there's a lot of room for error, I think, in these data points. But this is the best scenario, is that the hourly earnings actually dipped a little bit, and it took a little while for the market to kind of realize that. And we're from the initial reaction of where we were this morning, right here, it just seemed like this wasn't gonna hold to the downside, because the report just wasn't bad. It wasn't that bad. So it gave a nice trading opportunity. And things kind of, if you began to kind of think that way this morning, and that's how I set today up, and I began to buy things like the Qs, on like the first 5-minute bar, because I just didn't think, I thought the market would just overreact a little bit. And as the day progressed, I thought, hey, well, this could be basically just a day trade for some things. And as I began to get more alerts go off and more things that triggered for me, then it became, hey, well, we're so close to that hinging on a breakout or breaking into and above certain levels that it began to be a pretty good setup. So one of the things that I will say about the price action, because I mean, just a lot of, a big trending day. I mean, some of these moves from the open are just pretty dramatic. The blockchain stocks went up 4%, right? Clean energy went up 3%, or almost 4% from the open, right? These are not the absolute changes for the day, but just watching where they opened up was very impressive. And I'll add in here too, because this is one of the things that is in my playbook in terms of watching. Breadth was very strong, and I was kind of complaining about that a little bit earlier in the week when we did have a rally day, right? I'm mixing up my days a little bit, but if we go back, what day was this? This was on Wednesday, right? The SPY was up about 0.7 of a percentage point. One of my complaints was the breadth wasn't very strong. Today, on the other hand, the breadth was very strong, and and that's what you want to see. The next thing, because I was really kind of focused on, as I'm looking at the S&P futures, and where these things closed. I mean, this still has work to do, by the way, right? I mean, this is a nice move above the 5-period moving average, but we're sitting here below value and below the 20-day moving average. So if I hadn't said this already, but one day is not a trend. So this is a good start, and people were, I think people were able to kind of cash in on today's move, including myself. But this still is kind of challenged here for the S&P. So that level of resistance that I'm watching next is 43.70. Right, but I really didn't even spend too much time on the S&P, and actually, I was actually just looking at this towards the end of the day. S&P did not break outside of this week's value area. Now it will be above. This is the value area for next week, right? That'll be lit up in our system come Sunday night, but we should be opening up above the value area. But just interesting, we didn't get through that level. Where I think a lot of the action was, and this is where I was really focused on, because it was so close, as I had mentioned in yesterday's video. By the way, look at the volume in the Qs. It's unusual to see that much volume, but I think a lot of short covering today too. But there's your break into the value area. So that was the level that I was watching, was 359.78. So I can't see it on my screen for some reason. 359.78, and this was the other area that I had referenced in yesterday's video. Right, the break on this, and notice the volume, right? So when I was watching to see if that was going to break through for the day, we did it with such a strong green bar that I was like, wow, that's exactly what I wanted to see. I didn't want to see a wimpy looking candle that tries to break the 1 hour. I mean, it really broke it with conviction today, and that's what kind of led to my conviction for the day, because those levels that I was watching that were broken were just done with a pretty powerful move. So where we're at right now for S&P, which is nice. We don't have another level to watch up until about 370. So if we want to consolidate here and even back and fill a little bit, that would be okay. Provided that we don't come in too far, and even one of the things that's possible too is we could back test that break into the value area, which is 359.78. But this will trigger the 80% rule, right? So again, if you're not familiar, it's not lit up yet. It will be, I think, come Monday. I think this has to flip calendar days, and then this will actually turn into, from this month range bound to this month bullish 80% rule. So the 80% rule is, of course, this is the TTG MarketWebs indicator that we're looking at, but the 80% rule is not something that I came up with, right? That is value area studies, and just means once you enter a value area from either below or above and fall into it, there's an 80% chance that you break into it. Now, we had one of those last month. It was the bearish 80% rule, which I went over, right? We broke into the value area, and we went all the way down and actually went even further, right? There's no rule for whether or not you keep going, just whether or not once you get into the value area, there's an 80% chance that you go all the way through it. And that would be a lovely move. That would be up to 380.83. So very interesting to see how that develops as we go through October. I'll just go through a couple setups, but one thing, looking at what happened with TLT, still, this did not, the trend didn't change. So everything is not 100% better, but it was really nice to see the lows from the week held. So, again, you're not going to have a perfect picture, right? You still, in my opinion, have to be a disciplined trader, and, be paying attention to trades and so forth. But that's the story. And of course, because I go over these in just about every video, so I'll do it in today's video too. But, the dollar was a big story for this week, right? We've seen so many weeks. I was highlighting this earlier. We had a pretty extensive Q&A period earlier, but this has been the story with the dollar. We've just seen week after week after week where we've had 3 or 4 green days out of 5. So finally, there's 3 down days this week, even though we had a big day on Monday. So finally a little bit of pressure, coming off with the dollar. Now, the dollar could still end up rallying to that red line up there, that version point of control, but it makes sense for this thing to kind of maybe at least consolidate and slow down a little bit. All right, so we talked about a couple of the macro concepts, and ultimately, I hope that we can kind of get away from. Again, we were talking about this in the trading room, getting away from such a macro tape. So much on the dollar and interest rates. It would be nice if we can focus, a bit more on trade setups, right, and managing trades, and not so much every day what interest rates are doing. But that's wishful thinking. I want to talk about the top setup that I mentioned in yesterday's video. I just really, really like this setup in Meta. Again, it was taking its time, but stocks do that, right? That's why you just have to continue to monitor. And what was really compelling to me with this setup was the coiling and the tight price action. I love when that happens for a name that's in a defined uptrend. Sometimes it could spend a week, couple weeks, a couple months even. Sometimes names go sideways, for months and months before they take that next leg higher. So, you have to be patient with these things. And then when you do get the setup, and it triggers, you take it, and basically that's what I did here. And you had a heck of a ride in this thing today. So I'm still long. I did take a little bit of profits in this, but I plan to be long, maybe into earnings. A lot of these names we haven't really talked about too much of that in these end of day videos, but we're going to have a whole set of earnings reports that are going to come this month. So we're going to get our earnings season too this month. So I love the run into earnings, and I hope that we will get that. Again, everybody always wants to know whether a name's going to report good or bad earnings and the reaction and all that. But if you could catch the run into the report and forget about the actual, let let the people who like to bet on earnings reports, let them do that. But if you could get a nice, easy run into earnings, and then be able to take the trade off prior to the earnings report, and put that money in your pocket, that's a big win. So we'll see if this is starting the move. But yeah, I wanted to throw out a tip too that I've been that's been helping me a little bit. I set up, of course, I'm running a trading room, and I try to spot as many setups as possible, and that really requires me. I look at a lot of charts. I look at a lot of different groups of stocks. I look to see where that next leadership is going to be, in the relative strength areas. But I go through and I set a lot of alerts. The problem with that process of setting a lot of alerts is it's okay when you have like a slow move in the market and you get, this alert goes off or that alert. But on the days when you have like this, when there's a lot of movers, you'll get all your alerts go off. And it becomes very difficult to figure out, like, you really have to have a plan ahead of time to be like, okay, if I have 20 alerts go off, which names am I going to get into, right? So you have to kind of think about that beforehand, because I've had the situation before where all those alerts go off and you're like, geez, you end up missing a lot of moves. So if you have that plan a little bit earlier, and one other thing that you could do too is if it's a name that you really like that hasn't, because I usually wait for the trigger, right? I usually wait for whatever, and that's where my trading system comes in with the with volume at price and using the MarketWebs. But what I have begun to do is I actually will put not even like a starter position, just something in on my trading account, in the name, and it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if it's 10, if it's 1 share, if it's 10 shares, 25 shares. It's a little bit of a different meaning from when you have an alert go off to when you actually have, some type of position in your book. That tells you, like, hey, you've got it on, and this way you can kind of see what's going on. Now the alert helps too, and sometimes I'll have two of those things go on, but I just am a lot more ready, because ultimately, like, you putting that position in your account, that whatever small position that you choose, right? It's not the P&L that's important, whether the trade doesn't work, or doesn't trigger, or if it does trigger. It's just the fact that you already have it in your account, and it's a little bit easier to monitor than having all those alerts go off. Something that's been helping me a little bit. And I only will do that with the names that I'm like really super focused on. So, this was the name that I was, really watching for today. Another one too that, I'll just go over some of the names that I went over yesterday. This is nice. The NVIDIA did get over the 50-day moving average, right? That was what I was kind of looking at. There was 3 candles that touched the 50-day moving average and just couldn't do it. What I would watch is to see if it could break through the value area. That's 362. That's another $5 ahead. This thing did a bit of consolidation on the 1-hour VPOC. Again, I don't really want to see. Some people like when there's a version point of control like ahead of the price, because they know where to take a target. I don't want to see any of the red lines, because they end up being, they could, a name could end up not being able to make it through that version point of control. Remember, it's overhead supply. So that's what NVIDIA did. It really had a quiet afternoon, right? It rallied really nicely up into that version point of control, but it didn't do much afterwards. So if this is a name that's appealing to you, now you could set your stop, maybe just below this this version point of control here on the 1 hour. But yeah, so when I see a setup and I look, as I do on multiple time frames, and I see a version point of control right in front of me, I begin to I begin to say, geez, because what I'm looking for is ultimately just, I want no resistance. I'm always looking for the path of least resistance, right? Not where we've got a lot of overhead supply. I wanted to cover Apple too. Apple, I did not trade Apple today, but this is making its way through the value area. You could see the bullish 80% rule is lit up, and this could see a move up to 180. So this made a really nice move today too. I think I covered in yesterday's video, because I'm long this one too. SMCI, notice it got very close to that version point of control. Right, one's been moving slowly, but it's been moving more in the right direction. What else did I have from yesterday? I think I covered MOD yesterday, but man, there are a lot of names that I could spend an hour going through charts, and I won't do that today on a Friday. But really nice break here of the value area, and stretching out to new highs. Another one too is Synopsys. Right, this name's been kind of bottled up for a while. It's been such a slow mover, but maybe this now begins its breakout. It closed at an all-time high today, so amazing. Just a quiet name, but it's really been doing okay in a tough market over the last month. Very interesting. VRT got very close to breaking higher. Watch 39.69 to see if it maintains above that level. That would be your breakout level. And for the month of October. CAMT is another one that had a nice day too. This name had a nice check back to the top of value. Here's my watch list, and I made a mistake this week. By the way, Arista Networks, I'm not sure if we went over this one. I went over the chart for members yesterday, but I don't think I went over it in yesterday's video. Just really impressive. Was hanging above the 50-day moving average, but I forgot to put a name on the watch list. I really liked the setup into it. Put out the chart on Twitter, but I didn't take it myself. But man, this had a really nice move, nice little crunch here in the moving averages, and a nice move above. What else for our watch list? So I put out this watch list on Sunday night for members, and then of course we add to it as developments. But it really allows me to to focus on the names that I want to, and as well as, monitor the breakouts, CAMT, Palo Alto, the cyber names. So I went long. I actually tried going long Palo Alto earlier in the week, and it's one of those situations where I just didn't want to add risk, and I took the trade off, and it had a really nice move. Now the whole cyber group, which we were kind of sniffing around earlier in the week, and I did put on CrowdStrike, which had a heck of a move today. This was up 6.9%. But again, I like it when you see that very like robust moves out of not just one name in the group, but like 3 or 4 names. And this group was on fire today. Cyber had a nice day, right? And Zscaler, which is a name that I wanted to get into today. I already had the crowd on in the space, but another one, I think a lot of people are saying this, like, oh geez, I wish I would have had that name on, or what. You can only own so many names and manage them well, right? We're going to be talking about that in the weekend video. Every Sunday I do a kind of a macro video, and I'll be talking about some strategies for if we do, you have to have a plan, right? So if you're a regular viewer of my videos, you know that I don't make predictions. I follow price action, right? I get a signal, take it, and the goal is to stay in that trade for as long as the signal is active for. But so you do have to have a plan. This, like I said, this is going to set the 80% bullish 80% rule. So I'll be talking about some strategies and what I want to focus on and how I want to focus my trading if we do get some follow through after today. So if you are not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, you could go right here. You can get involved 5 days for free. You can get our recap, and you will get that video that I put out on Sunday. It's a nice intro just to see what our recaps look like and what our midday notes look like. All right, so that's you could go there. Is there anything else that I think that's it? I could talk for another 20 minutes, half hour, but I'll leave it there. Guys, have a great weekend, and really nice to see a trending day like that. And we don't have a crystal ball. Next week is going to be another big week with CPI and the PPI report, and we'll see what inflation has to say. But I'm a bit optimistic because October is one of the strongest seasonal months, so that's in the bulls' favor. Also, we know that hedge funds have been adding a lot of short positions, right? So if they have to cover, that could get things pretty interesting. And there's a lot of cash on the sidelines. We know that sentiment got pretty skewed, finally to the downside too. So there's some things that are in the bulls' favor. You just need to kind of have that continuation and maybe the economics, some feel that maybe that there's a little bit of confirmation that inflation is not raging at this point. And we'll go from there, guys. Have a great weekend.